Imagine being kidnapped by a serial killer. What would you do? This isn't just a thought experiment. It was a horrifying reality for Barbara Maybe Abel, a 31-year-old single mother in West Palm Beach, Florida, back in 1974. Barbara's life was far from easy. She was the sole provider for her 6-year-old son, Dale, and her twin sister, Beverly, who lived with cerebral palsy. But it was about to get unimaginably harder thanks to a man who would later be dubbed the Casanova killer, Paul John Knowles. On the day of her kidnapping, Barbara woke with an eerie feeling, a premonition that something was off. Her day proceeded as usual, dropping Dale off at school, going to work, but the unease lingered. When she returned home to find no answer from Beverly, the dread set in. She sent Dale to search for Beverly while she tried to shake off her anxiety with a glass of water, but then a chilling voice cut through the silence. "Don't turn around or I'll shoot." Defying the order, she turned and came face to face with a man, Paul John Knowles, wielding a sawed-off shotgun. Her world crumbled when Dale came in announcing, "Beverly's in the bedroom. She's bleeding." Knowles, with a cruel laugh, admitted to assaulting Beverly and declared his intention to take Dale. Barbara, in a desperate bid to save her son, offered herself instead. With a shotgun at her back, Barbara made the most difficult decision of her life. She left her home, her sister, her son, and stepped into the car with a man she knew was capable of murder. And so, Barbara, with her son's life hanging in the balance, stepped into the car with a serial killer. Alone with a murderer, Barbara knew she had to survive. As the car sped away from her home and the sun began to set, Barbara's mind raced with fear, but also with determination. She was trapped in a car with Paul John Knowles, a man whose good looks had earned him the nickname the Casanova killer, but whose actions were far from charming. Despite the terror coursing through her veins, Barbara knew she had to keep her wits about her. She began trying to charm Knowles, complimenting him, telling him he resembled Robert Redford. She was desperately trying to build up his confidence, to make him see her not as a victim but as a person. She prayed for the right words, the ones that would make him fall in love with her, for she knew her survival depended on it. As they drove, Knowles was getting frustrated. He kept fiddling with the radio, searching for news about himself, but to no avail. His face twisted into a grimace with each passing minute of silence about his crimes. He had a plan, though, a destination in mind. He told Barbara they were heading to Georgia. Deep down, she believed that if he took her there, he would kill her. The drive was marked by a palpable tension. Barbara full of fear but resolute, and Knowles increasingly frustrated yet determined. The open road stretched out in front of them, an eerie silence enveloping the car, broken only by the soft hum of the radio. Barbara knew she had to keep charming him, to keep him interested in her, to keep him from becoming the monster she knew he was. Unbeknownst to Barbara, her ordeal was far from over. The road ahead was long and filled with uncertainty, but Barbara was strong and she was ready to do whatever it took to survive. Little did she know, the real test of her courage was still to come. At a motel in Fort Pierce, Barbara's nightmare continued. The sun had set and the lights of the motel flickered in the warm Florida evening. They had arrived, Barbara and the man she now knew as Paul John Knowles. To the world, they were just another couple checking into a motel for the night. Barbara played her part, acting as the doting wife, wrapping her arm around Knowles to mask the cold, hard shotgun concealed under his coat. She was on edge, knowing that any sign of trouble could trigger Knowles's temper and risk the life of the motel clerk. As they walked into the room, the harsh reality of the situation became even more apparent. The room was small and dimly lit, with an air of an unspoken horror about to unfold. Knowles, who had been so charming just moments before at the front desk, had transformed. His demeanor shifted, becoming more sinister, mirroring the monstrous acts he was about to commit. He instructed Barbara to undress. She complied, all the while searching for a way out, a way to survive. That night he violated her, an act of violence that was as brutal as it was terrifying. But Barbara was not going to let this man break her spirit. Throughout the ordeal, Knowles kept the television on. The static noise from the TV provided a sinister backdrop to the unfolding horror. News of their kidnapping had hit the airwaves, their faces broadcasted on every channel. Barbara watched as Knowles reveled in the notoriety, his excitement palpable. He wanted to be famous, to be known, and Barbara realized that this could be her lifeline. But Barbara's strength was not yet exhausted. Despite the trauma she had endured, she was determined to survive, to escape this man's clutches and to protect her son. She had to stay strong, stay smart, and above all, stay alive. Little did Knowles know the tables were about to turn. In the motel room, a shocking revelation unfolded on the television screen. The newscasters' voices filled the room, their tone grave and serious. Barbara's heart pounded in her chest as she saw her own face and the face of her captor, Paul John Knowles, splashed across the screen. Every station, NBC, CBS, ABC, was broadcasting their images. The headline screamed of a kidnapping and a murder. The world was now aware of the harrowing situation Barbara found herself in. Paul John Knowles, however, reacted differently to the news. His eyes lit up, a spark of excitement clear in his gaze. For him, the broadcast was not a sign of danger, but a validation of his actions. He was now on the national stage, the center of a chilling narrative that was gripping the entire country. This attention, this infamy, it was what he had been craving all along. As Barbara watched him, she noticed something else. Knowles wasn't just excited about the attention, he was also excited about the story. He wanted to write a book, to pen his own narrative, to etch his name permanently into the annals of true crime history. He wanted to be remembered, to be known, to be infamous. This desire, this narcissistic need for recognition was a window into the mind of the man who had kidnapped her. But it was also something else. It was an opportunity, a glimmer of hope in the midst of a nightmare. Barbara was a radio copywriter by profession. She knew how to weave words, to craft narratives, to tell stories. And that's when Barbara saw her chance. With her life on the line, Barbara hatched a plan. She was a radio copywriter by profession, a role that required a quick wit, a way with words, and a knack for persuasion. At this moment, all these skills were her only lifeline. She had to talk her way out of this nightmare. She looked at Knowles, this man who had taken her from her home, her son, and her sister, this man who, in his twisted mind, thought he was some sort of Casanova, this man who was desperate for notoriety, for his name to be splashed across the headlines. And then the idea struck her. She turned to him and said, "You know, I could help you write a book." She explained her profession, her skills. She told him how she could turn his story into something that would grip the nation, something that would ensure his name was never forgotten. Knowles's eyes lit up at the idea. He was entranced, taken in by her offer. He saw a chance for the fame he craved, the recognition he thought he deserved. He agreed to her proposition, excited at the prospect of his story being told. But Barbara had no intention of glorifying this man or his heinous acts. This was her escape plan, a way to buy time, a chance to survive. She knew she had to keep him interested, to keep him believing in this imaginary book, in the fame it could bring him. She had to keep him distracted long enough to find a way out. She thought about her son, Dale, and her sister, Beverly. She thought about how she needed to survive for them. She thought about how she couldn't let Knowles win. She knew she had to be clever, to be cunning. She knew she had to act fast. In a public place, Barbara saw her opportunity to escape. The restaurant they entered was a sanctuary amidst the horror, a momentary pause in the terrifying narrative that had taken over her life. As Knowles led her to a table, the mundane normality of the setting was a stark contrast to the surreal nightmare she was living. Every sound, every movement in the restaurant was magnified in her heightened state of awareness. The clatter of cutlery, the murmur of conversations, the aroma of food cooking, all these ordinary things took on extraordinary significance. Each person in the restaurant was a potential ally, if only they knew her desperate situation. Fear was her constant companion, but it was also her motivator. It kept her alert, kept her thinking, kept her looking for that one chance to break free. But she knew she had to be careful. One wrong move could end everything. She observed her surroundings meticulously, looking for an escape route, assessing every diner, every waiter, anyone who could possibly help. She noticed the positioning of the tables, the locations of the exits, the traffic flow of the restaurant staff. Every detail was potentially crucial. As she sat across from Knowles, she had to maintain her facade. She continued to charm him, to keep him off guard. She laughed at his jokes, she flattered him. She did everything she could to keep his attention on her and not on what she was planning. But beneath the surface, she was preparing to make her move. She was ready to risk everything. She knew she might not get another chance. She had to be brave, not just for herself, but for her son, for her sister, for all the potential victims that could be saved if she could just escape. And so, with her heart pounding, Barbara prepared to risk it all. In the face of death, Barbara fought for her life. Her mind, sharp as a knife, worked tirelessly, devising a plan that would either lead to her freedom or her demise. At the restaurant, she had one chance, one opportunity. It was a gamble, a high-stakes game of life and death. He was there, oblivious, consumed by his own fantasies of infamy, and she was there, a prisoner, but not defeated. She noticed a waitress, a potential ally, a beacon of hope. Barbara did something extraordinary. She passed a note to the waitress, a desperate plea for help. The note read, "Call the police, I have been kidnapped." She had thrown the dice, risking it all. What happened next was nothing short of a miracle. The waitress, alert and quick to act, notified the police. Within minutes, law enforcement swarmed the restaurant. Barbara's captor was apprehended and she was freed. Her ordeal had come to an end, but her story was far from over. Reflecting on Barbara's ordeal, her bravery, quick thinking, and determination, we can't help but marvel at her strength. She was faced with a monstrous killer, a man who had taken the lives of many before her. But she stood up to him. She refused to be his next victim. Her mental fortitude and her sheer will to survive saved not only her life, but also her son's life. Remember the key points of this story. Barbara was a single mother supporting her family when she was kidnapped by a notorious serial killer. She was driven across the state, held captive in a motel, and tormented by her captor. But she remained strong. She used her wit and charm to buy time, to keep her captor at bay. She used her profession as a radio copywriter to convince her captor that she could help him achieve his twisted dream of fame. And when the time was right, she seized her opportunity and escaped. Barbara's strength and courage in the face of such adversity is a testament to the power of the human spirit. She showed us that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of hope. And so Barbara Maybe Abel taught us all a valuable lesson. In the face of danger, we are capable of more than we could ever imagine.